gather on this day, we begin by expressing our gratitude for this good land on which we dwell. Land where the vast prairie, the lush forests, the magnificent rocks, and the life-giving rivers, lakes and wetlands support all that lives under the canopy of a big sky. Some of us are descendants of the original peoples of this area, Anishinaabe, Cree, and Dakota. Some of us have our roots in other First Nations or in the Métis Nation. Some of us have come from other lands, or we are the descendants of those who came to make this their home. All of us are inheritors of Treaty 1, which is meant to be beneficial to all who dwell here, through agreements that were made to share the rich resources of this land, including the food that sustains us all. We know that the intentions and agreements of the treaties have not been fully honored, and all of us live with the mistakes of the past and their ongoing consequences. We also know that we need to continue to work toward reconciliation and reparation, believing that the wrongs can be made right and brokenness can be healed, so that all of us who call this place home can embrace the promise of a new future. Whoever we are, whatever history we carry, we belong to this wondrous creation, our earth home, and we give thanks. We light our candles here in Steinbach and in Niverville, praying that we will be led by the sacred light that dwells within us and among us.
There is room for all in the shadow of God's wing. There is room for all sheltered in God's love. Rejoice and sing, my refuge and my rock, in whom I trust. There is room for all.
Good morning and welcome to the second United in Spirit Beyond Our Walls service. The focus of this service is loving our neighbors and making a difference. And in Niverville, they will be welcoming our guest speaker, Glennis Quinn. She's Executive Director of One Just City in Winnipeg. Let us continue to worship with a community prayer written by Greta Vosper and Scott Kearns, and that is based on Francis of Assisi prayer. Let's join together. As we live every day, we want to be a channel for peace. May we bring love where there is hatred, and healing where there is hurt, joy where there is sadness, and hope where there is fear. We pray that we may always try to understand and comfort other people, as well as seeking comfort and understanding from them. Wherever possible, may we choose to be a light in the darkness, help in times of need, and a caring, honest friend. And may justice, kindness, and peace flow from our hearts forever. Amen.
Is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just to love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another mountain. There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb. There are oceans and rivers, enough to cross, enough to last till the end of time. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another meadow. There are cornfields and wheat fields enough to grow. There are sunbeams and moonbeams enough to shine. Oh, listen, Lord, if you want to know. But for everyone. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. What the
Good morning. This morning I'm going to read words written by Anne Thompson Corshane. She's under the weather today. Making a difference. As followers of Christ, we are called to love our neighbor and to make a difference in our world. But what does that look like in our everyday lives? At a recent Beyond Our Walls service, I spoke about how we can make a difference by speaking up on behalf of those who may be voiceless, and by showing our respect for just solutions when we see injustice and iniquity. Today, I will speak about another way in which we can make a difference. A number of years ago, I read an article about a United Church congregation who chose to make a difference by standing with people who were in conflict with the law. Through conversations with the John Howard Society, they realized that there were too many people who received unfair treatment in the justice system. In too many cases, it was due to them being perceived as less deserving of respect because of poverty, lack of education, or lack of family and community supports. Systemic racism also played a major role. The church folk wanted to make a difference, but reforming the justice system seemed like too big a task for them to take on. So they decided to do what they could. Volunteers from the congregation would dress up in their Sunday best and go to court with clients of the John Howard Society. They would simply show up and sit with the client during the hearing. The clients reported that they were listened to with more respect in court and often received better outcomes simply because they had a respectable-looking person sitting with them. Clients also found it comforting to have someone by their side in court. For a variety of reasons, many did not have strong family or community supports and faced being alone at a very stressful time. When I read that article, I was working for a non-profit mental health organization that worked with adults with severe and persistent mental illness. I realized that many of my clients simply needed similar support. They relied on disability benefits to survive, but they would regularly need to meet with their worker to review their eligibility to see if they were due for benefits. The stress of these meetings were enormous. Filling out forms, gathering a long list of documents, trying to get them all in order, and then going to a meeting might put their knowing that if it did not go well, they might lose some of their already inadequate income. That might put their housing at risk, as well as their ability to eat regularly. Their whole lives could be turned upside down. Clients dreaded these meetings. I started accompanying clients to their appointments. Beforehand, we would put their documents in order and make sure all the paperwork was complete. At the meeting, I would simply introduce myself and indicate that the client had asked me to attend as moral support. Then I would just be there. I generally did not speak. I might hand the client documents as they needed them, but I was simply there as a witness and a support. Clients reported that meetings went better when I was with them. It may have been because they had all their paperwork in order, or because they felt calmer and more confident with a supporter there. But clients also said they felt they were treated more respectfully and were often able to get the outcomes they hoped for. So how can you make a difference? Be there for someone. Show up when they need a supporter. Those who supported people in court did not have to know the law, or have great advice, or solve anyone's problems. They simply had to be there. Think of the ways in which you can be there for someone facing a health crisis, the loss of a loved one, or any unwelcome change in circumstances. Simply being with them makes a difference. It reminds them that they matter, that they are cared for, and that they are not alone. Thanks be to God. Judy Limpright from Niverville told me that she once attended a workshop led by Paul Rumbold, songwriter of our next song, What Can I Do? He shared that the original intent of the song was to include children in the offering that we share each week in worship. It reminds us that we are more than what we put on the plate each week. Let's sing it all together now as we ponder how we can make a difference.
Good morning. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Many of Mother Teresa's notable quotes involve acting with love. Mother Teresa didn't judge the people she helped. She didn't scold them for their past sins. She didn't refuse to help them because they weren't Christian. She didn't require them to repent before she helped. She just helped them by loving them. Mother Teresa's service was the epitome of Christianity, and one that we can easily emulate. Loving her neighbor as herself, loving her neighbor as if she were Jesus, serving her neighbor without judgment, without throwing stones. Mother Teresa lived her life as exactly as Jesus had instructed us, with faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these being love. Most of us find it easy to love our family and friends, but do we lead with love and without judgment when it comes to strangers, as Mother Teresa did? Key quotes. It is not enough to say I love. We must put that love into a living action. We are commanded to love God and our neighbor equally, without difference. We don't have to look for ways to fill this command. They are all around us. We must reach the heart. To reach the heart, we must do. Love is proven in deeds and actions.
We'll sing 169, and this is one of my favorite songs in this book. So if I sing too loud, then...
So the main thing on all of our minds right now at One Just City and everywhere in the world, I think, of course, is COVID. So how has One Just City responded? What has been our response to this COVID pandemic? Well, last March, when COVID became part of our reality here in Winnipeg, of course, things had to change. You see, all of our programming is built around relationship. You know, people might think of One Just City as a place that provides basic needs like food, clothing, shelter, and those things are absolutely true. Those are so important. But we like to think that our work also, maybe even primarily, functions at a higher level than that, a more transformational level. a level that that you and I, at least, as folks engaged in the Christian church, might relate to the level of care and love and community that we see in the Gospels through Jesus Christ. But that's difficult to do during COVID. So when things first started going crazy back in March, I'm sure you'll all remember, all the One Just City sites, we shut our doors. We didn't turn our backs on the community, but we shut our doors and said, okay, until we figure this out, no folk inside. And so what we started doing was serving lunches right from the doors of our sites. So we would have folk line up outside, socially distanced, of course, and wait for a bag lunch and a hot cup of coffee. And so that's where our response started during COVID. And that was good. That was actually extremely needed, speaking at least from the perspective of St. Matthew's, Maryland. When the pandemic started, we began to see numbers at our door double every day. So a busy day before the pandemic would have been like 80 people. And then right from the get-go last March, we were seeing 150 plus every day. Absolute madness. We were meeting people who said, I have never had to use a food bank before in my life. And I lost my job due to COVID, and here I am. And that's a scary reality. I remember doing an exercise in school where we were challenged to consider how many steps away we were, so to speak, how many steps away we were from experiencing homelessness ourselves. And when I reflected on that, there's quite a few steps for me. I've got a good job, I can pay for housing. If all of a sudden I lost that, or due to, maybe losing my good health, another thing in the way of me experiencing homelessness, I've got lots of family and friends who would care for me. But many of the folk that we work with at One Just City, probably the majority, don't have those safety nets of family and friends. And all of a sudden, you lose your job due to COVID, you are at risk of ending up on the street. So being able to respond to that and provide those basic needs in the moment was extremely important. However, I do feel that it sort of sucked the soul out of our work, out of that higher aspiration of bringing transformation in the communities that in which we serve. When someone just comes to the door for their bag lunch and their cup of coffee, you can share a few words with them, check in on them, but it's difficult to do anything deeper than that. We had to put a hold on all of our programs, and it didn't feel good, But our response has continued to evolve since then, and while things are definitely not back to normal, we have been able to respond in creative and good ways, I think. So at St. Matthew's, Maryland, we were able to open our drop-in back up. We communicated with the province on how to do that in the safest way possible. And we operate our drop-in space 6 days a week at St. Matthew's, Maryland. We do have limits on how many folk we can have inside at one time safely, limits set by the provincial restrictions, of course. But we can get about 25 people in. Now, one of the crazy things for me, if anyone has been by chance to our drop-in space in the West End, it's not big. It's not big at all. Right now it's freezing cold outside, at least it is at this time of recording on Wednesday morning. I think it's supposed to be warmer on Sunday, but it's freezing cold outside. And on a day like this, we would have, like I said, maybe 75 people crammed into our tiny drop-in space, and we would all be shoulder to shoulder like this, but we would be warm, we would be happy, we would be in community. In order to facilitate social distancing restrictions in our space, we have had to rent a larger space actually for our West End drop-in center. It's 4 times as large, I would say off the top of my head. And with that extra space, we can still only fit 25 people indoors at one time, socially distanced. So we've had to do a triage, which doesn't feel good, but it's part of our response, right? So we now focus our drop-in space on 1, individuals experiencing homelessness, especially on a cold day like this, and 2, individuals who live alone. We know that social isolation is always a problem, but it's especially a problem right now during COVID. And so we really want to provide a community space to folk who are at risk of not experiencing that anywhere else in their lives right now. But we're proud that we have been able to reopen it all. So what you'll see if you visited St. Matthews, Maryland on a day like today is folk lining up along McGee Street outside of our door. They'll be waiting for their lunch and their cup of coffee, and some of them will be coming inside to warm up if they fit into the criteria that allow for that. But of course, not everyone does. And so one of the other things that we've done at St. Matthews, Maryland, in order to keep building community during this time, is we've initiated an outdoor warming fire. And that has been great fun, actually. I think that is taking these restrictions and just making the best out of them. Flipping this situation around and saying, what can we still do that's safe and even, fun and creative, something we haven't done in the past. It wasn't my idea, so I'm not patting myself on the back here. But it's been very good. So what we've done is we've initiated an outdoor warming fire behind our building so that folk can still gather outdoors, where it's a little bit more safe to do in relation to COVID. And one of the extra fun things we've done with this fire is that on Mondays and Fridays, we have Indigenous cultural teachings around the fire, which I think has been super cool and lots of response from our community. So we've had individuals come and talk about how to have good, healthy relationships, specifically from an Indigenous context. We've had Indigenous singers and drummers come. We're going to have sharing circles out there. We haven't done that yet, but we're going to. But all that to say, we've had all kinds of different Indigenous cultural teachings, and they will continue. So that's been something fun. And of course, we're also, roasting weenies and marshmallows and stuff on the fire. So we're getting back to some of that community stuff. Speaking of community, the community's response during COVID has been absolutely fantastic. A lot of that has come from the partner church network that supports One Just City. I'm not entirely certain how you folk have been engaged with the other sites, but I can say at St. Matthews, Maryland, we're receiving sandwiches every day from various United and Anglican churches. We're receiving huge donations of non-perishable food to send home with folks. One of the other cool community responses has been from a local restaurant owner who has asked not to be named, but has donated, by this point, close to $500,000 worth of pizza, sandwiches, and other restaurant food so that we can pass out hot lunches a few days a week in addition to the sandwiches that we're doing. And so that's been pretty neat. Now, COVID is, the end is in sight, I hope, now that we're talking about vaccinations. And so what is St. Matthews, Maryland looking forward to doing when it's safe to do again? Well, St. Matthews, Maryland has two main programs. The first is our Indigenous Cultural Program. And when I say two main programs, I mean in addition to our regular drop-in space and our food programs. The first is our Indigenous Cultural Program, which is a new initiative of One Just City, which has started out of St. Matthews, Maryland, which I think is super important. So at One Just City, we recognize that as a Christian-founded organization and as an organization that counts many Christians among its staff and volunteers, we are aware that we have a responsibility to be a part of the reconciliation movement, a responsibility to offer opportunities for healing in the community. We know that we are historically complicit in the residential school system, and we see firsthand on a daily basis the ongoing impact of residential schools. I see, well, one moment that will stick with me, I think forever, was sitting with an Indigenous man, a grown man, who had been to residential day school, and him just uncontrollably sobbing in my office as he was relating some stories of the abuses he received at the hands of a United Church minister in a residential school. absolutely horrifying. And a reminder to me every day of the importance of being part of the response and in changing attitudes in our city and in our communities about relationships between settler and Indigenous Canadians, and righting some of those past wrongs as much as possible. So our Indigenous cultural program, sorry, this is a big one for me personally. I think it's so important, and I feel passion, and I feel a lot of emotion around it. So the way this program started at St. Matthews, Maryland, was instituting visible and meaningful Indigenous leadership on our site. I am clearly not Indigenous, but 60 to 70% of the folk who come through our door looking for services, looking for community, are Indigenous. And so we wanted to respond to that by providing Indigenous leadership on site. I think that's so important. We've hired a woman named Lori Abraham, a young Indigenous woman who's really amazing and can connect with certain, not all, but with certain Indigenous folks on a level that I couldn't as a white Christian minister. And she's taking the lead on instituting programs like those Indigenous cultural teachings around the fire that I mentioned. And as soon as COVID is finished, or we're vaccinated, or the restrictions have been lessened, what have you, she's going to start doing all kinds of other programming again. One that I'll mention here that I'm really excited about is she's going to start a first powwow club, she's calling it, where she is going to work with parents and grandparents, other caregivers, to make powwow regalia for their children. So they're going to make it, the parents and the children, and Lori and other teachers together are going to actually create these regalia on site. We're going to have expert teachers come in and offer teachings about the powwow and what it means. And then this summer, one way or another, we are going to have a powwow demonstration in the West End, where these kids are going to get to show off the regalia that has been created for them, and show off their powwow dance moves that they've learned, and teach the rest of us who may not know so much about powwow what they've learned. Who knows what that's going to look like? We can't tell the future right now with COVID, but I even hope that some of you folks will come out and join us when that happens. We are certainly going to make the invitation available to any United Church folk, or church folk in general, who are interested in coming and being a part of that. It's an act of reconciliation in my mind, quite clearly, coming together, Indigenous and settler folk together, and learning together, and just being together in community, hopefully sharing a few laughs, and maybe even a barbecue lunch if we're lucky. So the Indigenous Cultural Program, as I mentioned, is one of the big programs at St. Matthews, Maryland. The other is our Community Capacity Builder program. So that's a really neat program where we work with community folks to help them find meaningful ways to give back in their community, whether that be volunteering, often with us, or helping them to find life skills that can help them in seeking employment. This program works with people who have really struggled to find those things elsewhere in their life. I always think of one particular individual who told us that he was turned away before coming to us. He was turned away by 5 or 6 other charitable organizations who said to him that he would just be too much work to take on as a volunteer. And to be fair, this man has some fairly serious mental health issues, but how horrible to be turned away. So our program works with individuals like this person. We pair him up with mentors. We have a staff person who oversees all of this, and we find them something to do. In this guy's case, it just started with sweeping the floors, right? It's such a small thing, but it made a huge difference for him. He would come in, he would be in there just shortly after me every morning, ready to sweep the floors and make his contribution to the community. And he started with us 2 years ago. And although COVID, of course, has put the brakes on some of this, just yesterday, he and I sat in my office and completed an application form. He is hoping to go to school, a training program to work in the trades, in metalworking, actually. So this person's mental health issues have not gone away, but in working with us and in being welcomed into a community and in being given meaningful opportunities to give back to that community, he's found some stability in his life that would have been hard for him to find otherwise. And that's the kind of thing that our Community Capacity Builder program does. We also offer ongoing trainings to folk in the community, like food handling, nonviolent crisis intervention, mental health first aid. Just things that someone could put on a resume, or even if employment is not in their future, just things that can help them to grow as people. So those are our two main programs: Indigenous cultural programming and community capacity building. And we are continuing with them as much as we can during COVID, and we're very excited for when the restrictions are lessened and we can get back to it. I have not talked yet about Oak Table's bathroom renovation, or their major renovations, I should say. So, as I've said a bunch of times, I'm coming at you from St. Matthews, Maryland Community Ministry, but I can speak just a few words about Oak Table's renovations. So they are in the midst of a massive redesign of their space, with the goal of creating a comfortable and safe and welcoming community space. One of the key features of this new space is going to be their Dignity washroom, which is going to be a brand new, beautiful washroom space, which is going to be right at the entrance of their building. And the importance of that is that when someone comes in off the street and needs to use a washroom, we know this is an issue in Winnipeg, especially during COVID when everyone's got their doors closed. You need a clean space to use the washroom with dignity. So folk will be able to come in the door and go to the washroom and then leave. It's not like they have to enter the building and ask someone where the washroom is and then walk across the drop-in space. It's just easy. It's right there. It's accessible. And so it's a small thing, maybe, to those of us who have a washroom that we can use in our home. But if you don't have that, being able to just come in and do your business, so to speak, without having to make a big show of it and ask for help, is a huge thing in restoring dignity to a person who is not experiencing that elsewhere in their life. There are also going to be laundry facilities on site, which are going to be great. I don't know about you, I like wearing clean clothes. I've got a washing machine in my home. I'm very glad for that. Most of the folks we work with don't, even if they do have a home. The chance of them having a functioning washing machine in there is not high. So laundry machine is going to be huge there. This is an ongoing process for them. They're right in the middle of the renovation as we speak, but they're making it happen. It's going to be very cool. One of the other things going on out of our Oak Table site is One Just City's emergency overnight warming shelter, which I haven't talked about yet. We call that Just a Warm Sleep. I'm sure you guys are at least somewhat familiar with it. That's in operation right now, providing no barrier space to folk who want to or who need to have a warm space to sleep. Just this week in the news, we've been reading about individuals sleeping and overnight in the bus shelters. That's not news if you hang around this community, and we've been seeing that, and so some of you folks might be aware of that already as well. But there's a need for safe, warm places for people to sleep at night. There's more need than there is space, clearly, in the city right now, and so Just a Warm Sleep aims to address that, as I mentioned, in a barrier-free way. And what that means to us is that folk can come in no matter what. So they can bring their dogs and their pets, and they do. They can bring their shopping carts, which often contain all of their worldly possessions. They can come in and they can sleep next to their partners, which is interesting. At the other shelters, which are segregated by gender. And now when you're dealing with a Siloam mission or whatever that sleeps 500 people a night or whatever, there's a reason they have gender segregated. But our site is much smaller. We can sleep about 30 people a night. And one of the advantages is that it means that we can do things like let people sleep next to their partners. We will also let folk in who have been drinking or using drugs, as long as they don't use on site. So basically, this is going to be a safe space, or continues to be a safe space for everyone. One of the exciting things that happened literally just yesterday is that we've also received funding to hire and install 2 housing support workers on site at Just a Warm Sleep. So these people will be present during intake hours when folk are showing up, and they're going to be there to build relationships with folk, and then once they feel comfortable, help them seek housing, so that hopefully this time next year they won't need Just a Warm Sleep. As I say, we want to be about transformation, about pushing things past just the bare response to basic needs, as important as it is. So that's really exciting. And these people are going to be starting right away, hopefully as soon as next week, and helping people to find suitable housing and get off the street. So that's probably enough. I'm just looking at my clock here and seeing I've gone over 20 minutes already. There's just so much going on at St. Matthews, Maryland, and all the other One Just City sites. COVID really sucked some of the air out of what we were doing back last March, but we've really started to build back in a good way, respond creatively, and make sure that we continue to support our communities. At St. Matthews, Maryland, and at our other sites, we continue to see higher numbers than usual. Not quite double like we were in the early days, but still significantly higher, maybe 50% more at least daily. So we know that the need is there, and we're extremely grateful for folks like you who are supporting the mission of One Just City. And so thanks for listening today. Maybe we'll see some of you at our powwow this summer. Have a great time. I'm just going to add before I sign off, if things were normal right now and I was in your building this morning speaking to you live in person, I would offer a chance for some question and answer right now. And so that's obviously not possible in this format. But if you have got any further questions about One Just City, my email address, Josh, Josh, at onejustcity.ca. Shoot me an email. I would be really happy to talk with you further. If you have any questions about anything that's going on at One Just City, or how you can get involved, or ways to provide support, I would love to chat with you about that. Okay, thanks folks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
before we do this little next part about the offering, just a little side note on One Just City. Merle and I and Dennis and Pearl and Jarvis and Ken and Gay, every 2 weeks, one of the combinations takes the food bank truck to Winnipeg, loaded to the brim. Especially Ken, loads that thing up. I can't see out the back window. Luckily for side mirrors, I know where I'm going, but he packs that thing right to the top. I can't get anything else in there. But we make 3 stops in Winnipeg. We go to West Broadway, we go to St. Matthew's, Maryland, and we go to the Bear Clan way out on Southwick Avenue. And you won't believe how appreciative these folks are that we come every couple of weeks. And it's fun to drive to Winnipeg and to see these people. We go to West Broadway, and every time there's somebody new there coming out to get the load. And if we had 2 vans going, they could take it. But it's fun going there. And if you like to come along for a ride sometime, I'll leave Merle at home and you can join me. What we offer as a community of faith this morning is diverse and varied. Bless, O God, our multiplicity of gifts, of time, of talent, and of treasure, that we may engage the world's complexity with grace and with love.
Our community ministry focuses on transformational justice by affirming the worth of individuals, empowering communities, and seeking social justice.
We've been offering support in the community for over 60 years as an organization and have grown from one program that started in the basement of United Church to now having over 30 different programs.
Poverty is not being in partnership or not being in communion with the other. And when I asked one of our Indigenous brothers and what it meant to be poor, being poor meant a lack of kinship.
Any transformational spiritual moment or a moment of grace, you can't predict when that happens. It could be because it was your 30th bowl of soup for breakfast, or it could be because you got your income stable, and it could be that you had a place to sleep while you were working but not earning enough to find an apartment, and you had a safe place to keep your things while you were at work until you could find a new apartment. And that's one of the reasons why we have such a broad spectrum of programs that we offer, because there's no one magical thing or moment or program that works for everybody.
Being a sober parent is a big step for me. Like, I've been sober before, but not this long in being a parent. And I use my tools from talking to people that understand and that can give me good, honest advice back. And it's usually here at work. Outreach, the minister, my boss, people up in the admin. It just gives me that strength that it's okay, I'm not alone.
My experience here has been a positive one. I've been coming here for 11 years. I mostly come for the meal program. They've helped me with mental health issues, finding suitable housing. It's been nothing but a positive experience.
By giving back to the community sometimes, they give back to us also.
It's all about lots of love. The love here, honestly, it's crazy. It's really crazy.
When you come here, the door is open. I like it because it's friendly.
Well, I was a single parent and had my son home alone. I was on a fixed income. I needed somewhere to take him and could interact with other children.
It helps the people who actually need help.
For me, it was just a sense of community. It was just nice
We do drumming and pray together and read the gospel and offer smudging and traditional medicines to everyone in the room.
We do community ministry because Jesus told us, feed my sheep, take care of my people.
Your gifts to the mission and service of the United Church of Canada help make programs like these possible. Thank you, and please continue to give.
Holy One, source of all love, alive in us, among us, and beyond us, may your wisdom always guide us, may your will always be done, here as there and everywhere. Grant to us, as to our ancestors, manna, bread sufficient only for today. Welcome us home when we have wandered from your love, as we also welcome those who wander from ours. Separate us from the temptations of power, save us from doing great harm, for your love always guides us, your power equips us, and your joy transforms us, now and always. Amen. Before we sing the closing song, a shout out to our tech department back there.
Okay, let's stand and sing this one.
Oh,
You put the red berries in the bus. Oh, did you? I liked it. I don't know. Okay. But I got it. Caroline, oh no. It looks good. Nice meeting you, John. Yeah.